Hey there, and welcome back to Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you if they're any good in the Pauper format or not. Let's see what our first card of the day is. Get right into it. Merfolk Mesmerist is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 Merfolk Wizard. You can pay a blue, tap it, and target player mills 2 cards. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. Just this is really weak. I know creatures in blue should be weak, but 1/2 for 2 at this point, and it kind of doesn't really do much of anything. Milling only 2 cards. I guess you can mill yourself, but what deck is gonna really want to do this? Mono blue terror. Oh yeah, I'd like to mill some cards in my own thing, but yeah, but this thing's a creature, so you don't. If this thing gets milled into your yard, you feel bad about it. Could you do this in some sort of dredgy kind of deck that's also plain blue, which is not something that blue decks really do? And no, I mean, you could, I guess. It just is costing you a lot of blue at that time, and if you're putting in so much blue, that means you're not getting black and green, which are the colors you really need for something that's dredging, since Golgari is the one that came up with that mechanic. Could you put this in a persistent petitioners deck? That's a blue deck that likes to mill, but that deck needs advisors specifically, and this is a Merfolk Wizard. If this was a Merfolk Advisor, it probably still wouldn't be good enough for the persistent petitioners deck. In fact, it's been a while since I've looked at persistent petitioners. I wanted to see the stat line of it. So yeah, this is a 1/3. Yeah, okay, it's a little bit different. So it's the same mana cost. It's a better stat line because it has an extra point of toughness, and you're still paying 1, but target player mills a card instead of 2 cards. So you can kind of decide whether that's better. But the idea here is that you want to tap the 4 untap advisors to have a player mill 12 cards. So I think you're always just going to pick a petitioners over a Merfolk Mesmerist, even if this was an advisor. But it's not, so it absolutely doesn't go in those decks. This is just kind of a bad card overall. We'll give it a... I mean, is it so bad that it needs to be in the ones? Not really. We'll just give it a 2 and say it's fine. Rebellious Captives is 1 and a green for a 2/2 human peasant ally with exhaust for 6. You put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature, and then you earthbend 2. It's been a while since we talked about earthbending. Earthbending is target land you control becomes a 0/0 creature with haste that's still a land. You put 2 +1/+1 counters on it because of earthbend 2. If it was earthbend 3, you'd put 3. If it was earthbend 6, you'd put 6, But when the land dies or is exiled, you return it to the battlefield tapped, and you activate each exhaust ability once. Well, that exhaust is separate from the from the earthbend part, but exhaust just means, hey, you can't keep doing this. So what do you get here? You get a grizzly bear, literal grizzly bear here, and that it is 1 and a green for a 2/2 creature. That's just a bear. But you get better creature types, human and ally. Those can be useful for you. And this exhaust ability, much later in the game when you have 6 mana, you turn this thing into a 4/4, and then you also get a 2/2 land creature. And that can be cool, especially if you put this on lands that have ETB triggers, because then if the land dies or gets exiled or something, it comes back to the battlefield, so you get to double up on those triggers. Not something you see in the Pauper format, but in some other formats where you have access to rare cards, there are specific man lands, like the ones from Wilds of Eldraine, that have, or is it Wilds? No, it's from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. The ones from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Well, maybe there's some Eldraine ones too. Isn't the cottage the Restless Cottage? Yeah, that's from Eldraine. But you see, like, these man lands have attacks triggers. So yeah, you can animate the lands. That's why they're man lands. But you could also, if you earthbend this land, then it's a creature already. So it just, when it attacks, it still has an attacks trigger, even if you didn't animate it through its own means. So that's pretty cool. Not something you can do in Pauper. We don't have man lands like that. But still, earthbending things in Pauper is pretty good. I mentioned this yesterday when I was talking about my Kenku Artificer deck, but that deck also has ways of earthbending, and it's really cool to earthbend a bridge, an artifact bridge, because they're indestructible. So now you just made a 2/2 indestructible creature. What a great blocker for you! Even a pretty good attacker if you keep proliferating those +1/+1 counters, or add +1/+1 counters somewhere else, or even put an aura or something on it. I guess you can do lots of things to it. So that's kind of cool, and you're getting all of this out of a generically fine, mid card. Sure, but it has this hidden extra ability later in the game, and I like that extra value that you see. Does it mean it's going to get play? Nah. I'd rather earthbend things through other means that are cheaper or more efficient or stronger. I guess if you could blink, this is all. I have infinite mana at this point of thinking, but you could use the exhaust ability, then blink the creature, and now it's a new instance of the creature, so you can pay its exhaust ability again. So you could find some ways of earthbending all your lands, or continuing to earthbend the same land and giving it a bunch of counters. You could do all these things, but then you're just getting into the territory of, yeah, I guess if I just had infinite mana, I can do whatever I wanted to. This is not a particularly good card, but it did make me think about things, and I do like it for that. I'm going to go for a 2.4 on this one. No, because it is just a grizzly bear with a little extra on it. 2.2. 2.2. Afa Protector is 2 and a white for a 1/4 human soldier ally with vigilance. 2 allies, 2 human allies back to back. That's fun. This is not good. 3 mana for a 1/4 vigilance. Oh, thank you. It is an ally that can probably affect something, but not enough to change its score, which is just generically kind of whatever. I think this is almost worse than a grizzly bear because it is 1 power. It does stay. I don't know. I guess it's better. You can still attack with it. I mean, it's a Yoshin soldier, right? And I like a Yoshin soldier, but I like a Yoshin soldier because it looks awesome. Look at this boy. I mean, this is the Mirrodin art, which then became this other print. But the Antiquities art. Look at that guy. Oh, look at him. He's so cool. But yeah, 3 mana for a 1/4 vigilance, and that's what this is. But just not as cool. It probably is better than a Yoshin soldier, depending on whether you care about an artifact list or human allies list, but they're both pretty bad cards. I'm going to give this a 2.1. What do you got for me next? Veiling Oddity, originally from Planar Chaos. 3 and a blue for a 2/3 illusion with suspend 4 for 1 and a blue. So I won't go over suspend again. We just did it last episode on another 4 mana card actually that was a 5 mana card, but it had suspend 4 for 1 and a green. Anyway, this is suspend. It does the suspend things, blah blah blah. But when the last time counter is removed from this card while it's exiled, creatures can't be blocked this turn. And it's a 2/3, and that's a little bit interesting. So now you're getting a really bad card if you play this on turn 4. You draw this on turn 4, you play it, and you just played a vanilla 2/3 for 4 mana. That feels terrible. So this one, unlike the insect thing we saw last game, which was, hey, sometimes you can play that for 5 and feel okay about it. Sometimes you can suspend that for 2 and feel okay about it. This one, you really only want to suspend. And even then, that doesn't feel good because you know that all you're getting is a 2/3 eventually, and that's not going to come anytime soon. But this ability is kind of interesting. Having the last time counter removed while this creature from this card while it's exiled, now creatures can't be blocked this turn. One of the important things to note with suspend is that the creature does have haste when it comes out of suspend. So they don't force you to wait for summoning sickness after waiting all this time to get the creature in the first place. So this is a way of giving haste to a blue creature. That's kind of cool. But now you're at least getting in for 2 when this thing gets out of suspend. And then if you have a board of other creatures, then they can also swing in unimpeded because of that. So maybe you put that in with some ninjas, right? To flip the ninjas, and then you could do it for the Veiling Oddity, and then you could put the back on suspend for 4 more turns. This is not a good thing. I'm being sarcastic here. That is a thing you could do, but that would be an extremely slow engine that would feel terrible. So don't do that. Definitely don't do that. We have better ways of getting these kinds of effects, and you don't really even need these kinds of effects to win a game of Pauper. This is a bad card. This is just a really bad card. I think feel pretty confident giving this like a 1.3, maybe even less. Honestly, it's it does break the cardinal rule for suspend cards for me, is that they should be useful. They don't have to be good, but they do at least need to be useful, both suspended or paid for its full cost. And this one, not even being good at its full cost, really, really kills it for me. Bad card. Treetop Freedom Fighters is another avatar card. 2 and a red for a 2/1 human rebel ally with haste. And when this creature enters, you create a 1/1 white ally creature token. This does put 2 bodies on the table. Both of those bodies are allies. So if you are playing an ally deck, this gives you 2 triggers of that for any of your other allies that care about other allies coming into play. I don't mind it for that. The body itself, or the bodies themselves, are not very good. You're getting 3/2 of stats, 2/1 of its hasty. But if it was a 2/1 menace, I think I would like it a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, it's fine. If you are playing an ally deck, which we don't really have in the Pauper format, but I think could get here eventually once we did get more allies. I don't know when the hell we're getting more allies, because Avatar just came out and that was kind of our one big source of new allies. I don't think we're going to see any in the coming sets that we've seen, at least not from the ones that we know in universe. I don't think allies really show up much of those things. So I'm going to go with a 2.5. Say it kind of has a little bit of room to grow, but I don't think it's a particularly great card. Speaking of not really great cards, Alaborn Trooper is 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier. That's all it does. This is, in some ways, technically better than the Veiled Oddity that we saw in blue a couple cards back. But also in a much truer sense, it's somehow even worse. Yeah, just a vanilla 2/3 for 3 whole mana. You definitely don't need that anymore. And you probably never did. I'm going to give Alaborn Trooper like a 1.9. Yeah. Next up is Blur, 2 and a blue for an instant. Exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you draw a card. That's kind of not bad. It is an instant blink, so it doesn't come at the end of or at the next end step, which some blinks do. And sometimes you'll want that to get away from board wipes and things like that. But probably more often, you'd rather just have the creature come back instantly, or immediately rather, so you can get the extra value of ETB triggers or things like that. I like that it draws you a card. I like that it's instant speed. I like all these things. Like there's nothing bad about this card. It's maybe a little bit more than I'd want to pay, but to draw a card, that's probably fine. That's probably fine. I will say, if I'm looking for blinking cards, and I mentioned yesterday, and I might have mentioned, and I did, yeah, I mentioned earlier on this one too, that I have this Dimir deck that does a lot of blinking stuff. And the blinking card I use instead, and as we've shown it on the channel before, I misspelled that, didn't I? I did. Planar Incision. There you go. I like Planar Incision. 2 mana, which is cheaper, feels a little better to me. And then you exile an artifact or a creature, so it gives me a little bit more usefulness when it comes to playing with Tithing Blades or Grim Baubles. And then it also returns with a +1/+1 counter on it. So even if I have a Tithing Blade, I have a Tithing Blade now with a +1/+1 counter on it. If I then animate that Tithing Blade with Kenku, it now has the counter on it, but it's a creature. So there's some cool stuff you can do with the planar incision that I quite like. And I think that's slightly better for my purposes anyway than drawing a card, especially having that flexibility of being able to hit other things. There's also Teferi's Time Twist, which exiles any permanent you control, and you return it to the battlefield under at the next end step, and it comes with a counter on it. So this is maybe better if you're doing stuff with enchantments, because it can do any permanent. I guess you can do this with lands too, if that matters to you. But if it enters the battlefield as a creature, so it's not as useful for me and my purposes of wanting to put +1/+1 counters on Tithing Blades or artifact bridges or things like that. But this can be useful to also get a +1/+1 counter on your creature. I like Teferi's Time Twist too. Drawing a card's good. Drawing a card is good. I think that's a bit of a personal call. Then the other thing I'd mention, because we did have it last episode, is Ghostly Flicker, which is the same mana cost for an instant, and it flickers two things. It doesn't draw you a card, but it does flicker two things. And that can matter a whole lot more, especially if one of those things is like a Prophetic Prism in a Tron deck, because you're flickering the Prophetic Prism, which then draws you a card, or you're flickering a Cryogen Relic, which draws you a card when it leaves the battlefield and when it enters. So it could potentially draw you even more cards than a Blur could. That's something to consider. I think Blur's a fine card, probably better in something like Commander or a limited environment, or even a cube. But if you want a better option, I think Ghostly Flicker is just right there for you. And then some of the other options I even showed you, I wouldn't say are good, but they are options I like anyway. I'm going to give this a 3. It's a fine card, but not an amazing card. Piety Charm is a single white mana for an instant. Choose one. Either destroy target aura attached to a creature. Okay. Target soldier creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. That's pretty specific. And then creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. That's maybe a better option. These original charms are fun. I like these charms. They are not good cards. And the story behind them is that I forgot which magic designer was making these charms, but he had these ideas of, well, that could be kind of a useful spell, but it was so narrow or it was so weak that he couldn't justify them even at 1 mana. You know, you try to think of like what are things that are worth a mana, and sometimes you're going to come up with things that aren't worth a mana, but they're interesting ideas. So what if you slapped 3 of those potential ideas on a card and said, well, you can just choose any of them depending on the situation. So destroying an aura, because think about the other cards that you have available to you. Like Demystify is a single white mana for an instant that destroys target enchantment. That is strictly better than this first mode of Piety Charm every single time. Because this can only target an aura, and also that aura has to be attached to a creature. It's not even being able to take out a wild growth or something like that, which is crazy. So that's very specific. Not really worth a mana when we have Demystify, which also is not a card that's very good. But, just as a direct comparison. Target soldier creature you control, or target soldier creature, I guess it doesn't have to be you control, but target soldier creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. That is so specific. It's not... There's white cards that will give you +2/+2 to just any one creature, or maybe even all your creatures. But it has to be specifically a soldier. I guess if you build your deck in a specific way, and this is Onslaught, that soldiers were a deck back then, or a tribe at least for this block. So yeah, okay, maybe you can get a little something there. And then creatures you control gain vigilance. That's not terrible. That can be somewhat useful. That's a very wide ability, and giving that to all your creatures for a single mana, I don't know, kind of depends on how many creatures you got, but none of these are very good. But put together, the card's almost kind of useful. And it led to us getting much better charms over time. Not in our format, but generally in Magic, charms are very cool cards, and they've put a lot of cool things on them. Most recently, we got the Secrets of Strixhaven set of charms for each of the schools, and those charms are really good. There's some really cool stuff you can do with those, and I like those cards a lot. I just like charms for that modality. This is kind of stretching the definition of modality when some of the modes are this pointless. You kind of go, well, what am I really paying for? I'm going to give Piety Charm a 2.1, and it probably doesn't even deserve that. Ghost Form is 1 and a blue for a sorcery. Up to 2 target creatures can't be blocked this turn. Pretty normal card. I if you have some giant creatures, if you have some Tolarian Terrors or a Cryptic Serpent or something, I don't know, maybe this is kind of cool to put on them and swing in for some big damage. And if it gets milled into your graveyard, no big deal. It's just another sorcery that makes those cards even cheaper. I think having a sneaky one-off in a mono blue terror deck, maybe it even goes in like a sideboard from mono blue terror of knowing that, okay, my opponent's playing some go wide thing. I'm never going to get my creatures through. So what if I do have a Ghost Form or two that just allows me to take out some big chunks of my opponent's life total? And maybe that'll work. I think Ghost Form can be a useful card. We probably have better versions of Ghost Form in the format that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head. But I do see a use case for it, and I kind of like it for that. I'm going to go for a 2 point... another thing, actually, is any of the Poison Storm decks. You might have a creature with Infect or Toxic or something like that, and you want to make sure it gets through to get the first point of poison, the first poison counter on your opponent, so then you can start proliferating and putting the rest of them on there. We have other cards that can just give your opponent a poison counter, so this is probably a little less useful in those decks, but still something to consider. And I kind of like Ghost Form. I'm going to give it a 3.1. Not bad. I don't know if I marked this one down or not, so maybe we're just going to get an extra bonus card. We will see. Vanish from Sight is 3 and a blue for an instant. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on their choice of the top or bottom of their library, and you get to surveil 1. Okay, little time ebb with extra gravy on it. I like that it's instant speed. I generally don't love time ebbs because I think they just feel a little overcosted, but I suppose they are a big tempo loss for the opponent. Time ebb itself is a sorcery, right? That's almost positive. Time ebb. Time ebb's a sorcery. So you are these kind of new time ebb effects that we're getting in a number of different sets. This one's from Dustmorn, but they're sometimes you'll see them at instant speed, but most of the time now they're giving the owner of the card a choice of whether they put it on the top or bottom. So your opponent can choose: do I want to time ebb myself? Do I want to lose that tempo? Or do I put it on the bottom of my library and just go, okay, well, I don't have that card anymore, but the next card will be useful to me. Generally, I don't love giving my opponent options. I don't like them to be able to choose the thing that's best for them. Even if both options are bad, they will still choose the option that is least bad for themselves. But this can be pretty darn useful to take a really big creature off the table for them, and then they have to figure out a way to get it back onto the table. That can be easy sometimes with like a Tolarian Terror or a Cryptic Serpent that can be very cheap when they come in. A Mirror Enforcer, same type of deal. It can even be really bad for you if you try to Vanish from Sight Maelstrom Colossus, something with Cascade. So then it just gives them an opportunity to cascade into something else. that can be really bad. There are a lot of good ETB trigger things in the Pauper format, and this one's going to, maybe get yourself in trouble. But it's not bad. I do like that it gives you a that it gives you a surveil. It's giving you a little extra bonus in there. It's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. We'll go with a 2.7. One of the better time ebbs, I guess. Strength in numbers is 1 and a green for an instant. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets plus X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Not too bad, honestly. Originally from Time Spiral. This kind of gets you. I mean, it's not the same thing as a Craterhoof Behemoth. Let's get that out of the way. This is not common Craterhoof Behemoth. That's certainly not true. But in some kind of Selesnya deck, maybe, or maybe even just mono green, like even actually, you know what? This could be like elves, I suppose, because you're just putting a ton of creatures on the board, and then you can swing in, and now your opponent has to choose how they block, and you can wait until they've chosen the blocks, and then once blocks are chosen, you can either put this on a creature that is not being blocked to give all the power in the world to get through, but it also gives the creature trample, so you could even put it on a creature that you might have lost at one point, and now you're not going to lose it and still do a bunch of damage to the opponent. Strength in numbers is pretty good. Now, that deck, the elf deck, is going to play things like the Nyxborn Hydra, which is just generally more useful. It keeps that power and toughness on the table, and it works kind of double time, because even if they remove the creature, then the aura now becomes a creature itself and is quite big. It gives you reach and trample. There are reasons you probably still just want to play Nyxborn Hydra over this, but I really like the instant speed. I wonder if this might be something that an elf deck wouldn't mind playing a single copy of, just to see if maybe they could make it work. I kind of like it. I'm going to give it a 3.6. No, I'll go even higher than that. I think this card is actually pretty good. I'm going to give this a 3.9. Yeah. Strength in numbers. Neat card. Let's do a bonus card of the day, if that wasn't our bonus, and I don't really know. Another avatar card. Okay. Earthbending Lesson is 3 and a green for a sorcery that's also a lesson, and it earthbends 4. That makes sense, right? It's an earthbending lesson, and it's a lesson that earthbends. That's card says what it does. Earthbending 4 is pretty good. Put 4 counters on a land you control, and it becomes a creature. And if that land dies, it comes back to the battlefield tapped. That can be, as we mentioned before with earthbending, that can be pretty cool to put it on a land that has an ETB on it. Sure, so you get those double triggers if and when the land creature dies. 4 +1/+1 encounters is pretty good. You know, again, you put that on an artifact bridge, now you've got a 4/4 indestructible. I don't mind that. That can be pretty cool. Earthbending Lesson, I think, is a solid card. It feels a little expensive to me. We are paying 4 mana at sorcery speed, and if you, not that you don't have a land to put it on, but I still don't love the idea of, if I have 4 mana, why wouldn't I play a 4/4 creature instead? And I think I'd prefer the 4/4 creature, because if I tap the land for mana, then it doesn't matter if it's a creature or not. I'm still just using it as a land. I think just having a creature here is generally the better thing. I'd prefer for this to cost 3 mana. I think 3 mana at sorcery speed, I can feel better about this. I feel like I'm getting more of a deal. I would even take 4 mana at instant speed. That would also feel like, okay, I can at least hold up my mana to do something with, and then if at the end of my opponent's turn, then I can use this. I've seen people try to make earthbending decks, and this is a card they naturally go to because it's a card that says earthbending on it. There aren't that many cards that have earthbending. But this is one that when I'm thinking about an earthbending deck myself, this was not one I went to. I think it's just a touch expensive for me. So not quite my cup of tea, but it's close. And I like the general idea. I think earthbending as a mechanic is really cool. So I'll go with a 3. But I think it probably could have been much higher if it was just slightly better. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me. We will catch you on the next one. Bye.